Good day and welcome to Essential Leadership Skills, a discussion with TEDx speakers. Haven't you ever longed to have a happy staff, and you being happy on the job site? How would your work life be if you were truly happy on the job? Our discussion today centers around your pursuit of happiness. Please join Director of Operations Glenn Daniels and his guest Sharissa Sebastian. She is a certified leadership and executive coach with an MBA, MSc in Technology Leadership and her BCC certification from the International Coaching Federation, ICF, as well as a Myers-Briggs certified practitioner. She has 15+ years of corporate leadership experience in addition to coaching several Fortune 100 leaders and executives. She's also a TEDx speaker, a writer for Forbes and the Huffington Post, and a member of Forbes Coaches Council. Her many years of experience include helping leaders draw on their strengths, see their value, and be able to bring out the best in themselves and others, all while having fun, being fulfilled and not burning out. She's able to masterfully help them navigate their blind spots while thriving in their zone of genius to take their career and leadership to a level that has a significant impact on themselves, their teams and their organization. Her clients include leaders and executives at companies such as LinkedIn, Facebook, Microsoft, Harpo Studios, Bank of America, CNN, the United Nations, Intuit, Victoria's Secret, US Bank, Ameriprise Financial, and Nestle, among others.
This is a Touchstone Publishers presentation, your trusted source of leadership knowledge.
Well, good morning, and for those of you who know by now, I'm always going to say good morning. I don't care what time zone it is. If it could be nighttime, I'm saying good morning. It's just my little way to keep myself up because the day starts always good with a yes. I want to thank very much the fact that we have Sharissa here today. Her message is powerful, but if you've noticed, of late, since we started this series, we're starting to get world leaders in thought. And she's definitely one of those, as you heard from all her credits that she has going. Sharissa, thank you.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to join today, Glenn.
And am I saying the name correctly?
Sharissa, yes.
Sharissa, okay.
Yeah.
All righty. So I just looked at something here. So tell me real quick, in your introduction, there was a statement made that was kind of, took me a little bit by surprise. The genius zone.
Yes.
Okay, I want to ask you about that first before I actually formally get started with my questions. But tell me about the genius zone just a little bit.
Absolutely. So I think a lot of times we are so used to, even as leaders, we look to others, we look for inspiration or how do we become better and all of those things. And a lot of times we look outside of ourselves and maybe even compare ourselves to other people and things like that. When really we have so many things that make us unique to who we are, our strengths, the things that are inside of us that make us different and help us have a different and unique leadership perspective and leadership style. And that's what I call the zone of genius. So when I work with my clients on this, I work with them to, first of all, focus, inwardly to see, okay, what are the things that you already have, the strengths that you possess, the areas of interest, the things that maybe, impact you, that maybe impact others in a different way, but the things that are really important to you. And all of these things, there's so many elements that come into play there, but it's basically to find your own zone of genius when it comes to leadership and function from that place, because that's where it gets so deep into the core of who you are and how you're wired. And so when you function from that place, you're automatically setting yourself up for success versus immediately looking outwards to see, okay, what are some of the things that other people are doing and how can I do that? So of course there's an element of that that's helpful as well, but I like to start with what I call the leadership zone of genius and getting really clear with what that is for you, so that no matter what the circumstance, even if there's things that are happening that maybe are outside of your control or going wrong or whatever the case is, you can fully step into your confidence and be so sure and secure in who you are as a person and what you bring to the table, that you can lead from that place of complete presence, focus, and power.
I like that. That's very powerful. Just being where you're supposed to be and building up from there. Let me get started then with our official line here. I want to ask you, the very first question I always like to ask is, what is unique about you or your TEDx talk or your organization? What's unique, powerful, that people need to know about?
Absolutely. So talking about the TED Talk, and I think I'll start from that perspective as far as what is unique. One of the things I noticed in my own corporate career, and that's why my TED Talk is entitled The Pursuit of Happiness in the Workplace, is what I realized is that even from my own experience, and I can say this from personal experience, that I spent so many years in the corporate world, trying to figure this out, trying to see, how can I be more fulfilled? How can this really matter to me or mean something to me? And how can I get real enjoyment, out of what I'm doing? And I started to look around and realize that there's so so much, like we are so used to just being in this go mode, right? Of like constantly going for the next thing and focusing on what do we do next and all those things, that we lose the sense of like happiness and fulfillment and purpose and all those things. And that kind of takes a back burner because we're so focused on what needs to get done and the expectations that are set for us. And so I think what makes my approach a little bit unique is taking a step back from that. And rather than saying just, rather than focusing just primarily on the work and what needs to be done, figuring out how can we incorporate a sense of purpose and meaning and joy and belonging and all of those things that lead to happiness. How can we lead from that place? And then, the work comes together, right? Then people become more productive and things just get done in a much easier way, rather than if we're simply focused on just the grind and, trying to get things done that way. So I think that's what makes my perspective a little bit unique. And also because that's been my background. I come from a corporate leadership background, specifically in technology leadership. And I saw the struggles. I see the struggles, that go on every day, even now when I coach my clients. And I've been through a lot of that myself.
Tell us real quick, Sharissa, about the journey from the time you conceived of the ideal to the time that you stepped up on the stage. What was that like for you?
Sure, that's a great question. So my intention was never to be up on the stage and to even have a TED Talk. In fact, I am such a big introvert that was never something that I thought of pursuing at all. But what ended up happening though is, as I started, like even go back to my own journey, from being in the corporate world to being a coach, I had a coach when I had so many struggles, when I was in that corporate environment, and I just couldn't find the sense of like fulfillment, and I was just completely burnt out in what I was doing. And I started to look around and realize that I wasn't alone. There were so many people that just didn't seem really happy or fulfilled in their jobs. And so through my own coaching journey and experience, I was able to, work through that and have some insights and perspectives that I never had before. And so that's what I used in my coaching practice, and that's part of what I use today to really help my clients to navigate through some of those things. And so what ended up being kind of a common thread that I started to see is that, I felt like I had such a strong message to deliver around how do we bring the sense of happiness and fulfillment into the workplace. And so what I started to do was I started to put my thoughts on paper and I started to write. And so I pitched some ideas to the Huffington Post, to Forbes, and several publications, and I got published in Forbes. And actually, interestingly enough, that was the start of this idea for the TED Talk, because the title of the Forbes article was The Pursuit of Happiness in the Workplace. And so when I put that out there, I had no idea what was going to happen. I just thought, I just kind of prayed about it, and I said, if it helps one person, then my job is done. And so I put it out there, and then what started to happen is people started to really respond to it, and I started to get a lot of people sharing it. Companies were picking it up. I've got contacted by several people, and I thought, okay, this sounds like there's something to this. Like people are starting to get value out of this, and so I thought, okay, how can I take this further? If it's helping these people, I want to be able to take this message a step further and maybe expand it and help as many people as I can. And so that's where the idea for applying to the to TEDx came from, and that's what I did. I basically based it on the article as a starting point, and then pitched that idea to TEDx. And that's how I ended up on the TED stage. So I can't say that this has been a lifelong dream or anything like that, but at the same time, now that it's done, I'm very grateful, because it has, I get so much feedback on the talk. And so I'm just really happy that I had the opportunity to do that.
Did you have any challenges with the day of giving the talk? I mean, were you nervous? Were you kind of just okay with it and said, I'm just going to do my best if I help one person? Yeah. Or were you nervous about it?
Oh, I was for sure very nervous, because that's definitely way out of my comfort zone to be able to do that. Yep. And also, as you know, TEDx is a whole different, it's a whole different animal. So there's lots of rules and things like that. And I had to have my talk completely memorized. And so there were lots of different elements that went into that. And so on the day, all of these things, of course, had to come together for me to be able to deliver this talk. And so, yes, it was very, very nerve-wracking. And, I definitely, I won't say that it was easy by any stretch, but I also did a lot of mindset work, and actually part of it is what I talk about in the talk. I did a lot of mindset work around this to make sure that I'm tapping into that place that I needed to tap into in order to deliver this message that needed to land really, as powerfully as I could land it, so that people really resonate. And so that exactly what you just said, that was one of the things that kept going through my mind. It's not about me. It's not about how I deliver it or anything like that. It's about the message that needs to go out. And so because my focus was so much on this message needs to go out, and I need to do the best I can, but I'm not going to focus on how people are perceiving me. I'm going to focus on, if this helps one person, I've done my job. And that's what gave me the courage to really step out and say, okay, God, use me in this moment, and I'm ready to go.
So how hard was it for you to draw this powerful topic down into an 18-minute or less talk? Was that difficult? Or
Oh, it was
difficult.
Yes, that was a 6-month process to get it to where it was. But yes, it was definitely very, very challenging to distill it. And I had a speaker coach that helped me along the way. And it's interesting now because I'm on kind of the other side of that. And now I coach TEDx speakers, which I love. Like that's one of the things that I really enjoy doing. But I had a speaker coach that was helping me through that journey and helping me refine the talk along the way. But yeah, not easy by any means, because there's so much to pack into a very short amount of time, as you know.
It is kind of fun challenge. I have your title up on the screen, and then also I have now a different link, which I thought was brilliant on your part. So the first link we had scrolling at the bottom was just the actual TEDx link. But the link we have now is to your website and the TEDx talk, where I think is brilliant that you have a place for the notes. You have, what is it, a download or something that people can download and make notes?
Yes. Absolutely. So what I have, it's kind of like a cheat sheet to the TED Talk. So if any of your listeners are visual learners like I am, I like to see the visuals and I like to see how things, come together. And so what I did is I created this little cheat sheet or this PDF. So it's very easy. So even if you're listening to the TED Talk and you want to reference that as we go, as I go along, you have that. And even after the talk, if you want to have a little cheat sheet available to you for, how you do this, how you can do this in your workplace and take this into work every day, you have that available to you. And so that's why I created that page where you can go in there and then just, request it, and that will immediately be emailed over. So that's a nice little supplement, I guess, or,
Yes.
Additional notes for the talk.
Yeah, it's a great little bonus. I'm going to start off kind of in the order that things struck me.
Okay.
And this one kind of came up toward the end of the day. That's why I bring it up to you. But you gave this 80-20% kind of formula that equals happiness. Can you spend a little bit of time and tell the listener what this 80-20% is?
Oh, sure. So with the 80-20%, and this really comes from this idea of like we place so much value on things that are external to us, right? So a lot of times, and I've said this myself, that, if I had a better boss, or if I had a higher salary, or if this or that or the next thing happens, then, I'll be happy. That those external factors, a lot of times we perceive as things that drive our happiness, when really it's the internal things that make the biggest difference. And so that's really what the idea of the talk was all about. It's like focusing on the 80% of things that are really going to bring you, that sense of joy and happiness and fulfillment. Yes, the 20% matters, but it doesn't matter as much as we think. The external factors don't matter as much as we think they do. And so it's more about like breaking that down into what are the areas that we really need to focus on that really moves the needle a lot more, based on science and research. And there's been so much research done in this area as far as what really contributes to us being happy. And so that's really where this formula came from. And it was more of a reminder to us that a lot of times we focus so much on the 20% and we think that that's what's going to get us to the place that we need to be, when really there's so much more that's involved. And a lot of times we minimize the other things that truly are the difference makers.
Well, so if I gathered right, what we're saying, the 20% is external factors. I'm going to play a little bit of a devil's advocate here, because the 20%, the external factors, isn't that what we rely on to get the promotion or the pay raise or the contract?
Sure.
So how is that only 20% of the equation if we don't get the external feedback?
Absolutely, yeah. That's a great question. And so the way I look at this, it's not so much about getting the feedback, because we absolutely need that feedback, right, to be able to improve. And there are also external factors that are going to impact our ability to move forward. So, for example, like you talked about a promotion or pay raise or whatever it is, whatever we're looking for as the next step. Of course, it's not just dependent on us. It's also dependent on what the expectation is of us from our managers, from our leaders, or whatever it is to get there. So it's not to say that those are, we should negate those. But if 80% of our focus is on pleasing somebody else in persuading and just focusing there to get what we want, we're losing out on the 80% that's really going to help us to shine as individuals and help us to get that much further. So it's not to say that we shouldn't be looking for those external factors to give us feedback and input, but we shouldn't be putting all our focus in that, because then we're losing out on really focusing inwardly to say, what do I need to do in this moment, or, as a leader, to be able to really step up? How can I leverage what I already have and focus on these things that are really going to give me, that sense of happiness and fulfillment, because that's where I'm truly going to shine. It's not so much about just looking for the next thing, but it's about how can I really truly shine where I am. And then, then I can figure out, then it's so much easier to get that clarity on what's the right next step for me. And then you can start to get this external input to say, where are these areas that I need to focus on? But I really believe that it needs to come from yourself first, because that's where you're really going to shine.
Yeah. So you're actually saying that 80%, coach me if I'm wrong, but that 80% is an internal. Are you doing the things you should be doing? Are you happy with yourself? That's what that 80% is the internal focus.
Absolutely. Yes. Absolutely.
That's probably why we struggle so much, because most of our focus of happiness seems to come from external sources, a lot of people.
That's right.
What's on TV? What can I drink? I mean, what can I eat? But here's another controversial thing that, let me just show it, and then I'll play devil's advocate again with it.
Sure.
Okay. Being in full control of your happiness, you have to be in full control of your happiness at 100%. Mm-hmm. Explain that to me a little bit more.
Sure. So happiness, a lot of times it comes from how we interpret what's going on in our environment, right? So, and a good example of this is two people, and I think I have an example of this even in the TED talk that I shared, is that two people can go through exactly the same experience, but have an completely different way that they view it, and then they feel a different way as they go through that, right? So they could go through exactly the same circumstances, but one person is going to experience it different than another. And so a lot of that comes from the lens through which we view the world and the meaning that we give every situation that we're in. And so that's where this idea of the 100% of the happiness comes from us. Because if you look at that example, right, it's not about the external factors. It's not about the circumstance. You can put two people in the same circumstance, and they're going to have a different outcome, a different way that they're going to experience those situations. One person could look at that and go, wow, this is an incredible opportunity for me to grow, for me to learn, for me to do something different. And another person can look at that and feel completely trapped and be in that fixed mindset versus the growth mindset, which again I talk about in the talk as well. So that's why it's so important for us to realize just how much of an impact we have on our own happiness. It's not about like saying it's about if I just had this or that or this person was different or whatever it is. It's not about looking externally. It's about owning that, because it's from that place that you truly have the power to pursue this happiness or to experience that sense of happiness and joy and fulfillment.
Something that you said in the program and in your TEDx talk is kind of a clue for all of this, I think, because it sounds like really we're saying if you want to be happy, you need an internal focus. You were talking about you sitting in the car getting ready to go onto the job.
Yes.
And how much you just didn't want to be there, and you spent many moments just meditating.
Yes.
Can I ask you, what was that meditation process like for you to get yourself out of the car after 30 minutes, 45 minutes? What did you do? I mean, like there's several, people meditate to music, people meditate to silence, people meditate with mantras. What did you do?
And I love that you brought this up, because it's actually a big part of the talk that, when I was talking about the 80%, it actually does boil down to a lot of things that I was focusing on in those moments. So there's a couple of different aspects. When I was meditating, I was tapping into a couple of different things. One is gratitude. Like, how can I shift my focus to be grateful for where I am right now, rather than looking at it through the lens of, I really don't like this. This is, not what I want, or whatever it is. But also recognizing that I have a choice in every moment, right? I get to choose how I'm thinking, how I'm interpreting things, and how I'm showing up, basically. And that's going to impact the experience that I have. So the other thing is focusing on why I'm there. Like, there's a reason that I was there at that particular moment in time, even if I knew that was going to be temporary for me. But I viewed that as an assignment. So even though it wasn't the best situation, there were a lot of things that weren't going well. For me, I looked at it through the lens of, like, what is my assignment here? There's a reason that I'm here. What value can I provide? How can I help somebody today, have a better day, whatever the case is. So it's that gratitude, it's that. And then part of that process was being intentional, like me putting my mind in the right state to say, I am going to be in control of this day. And I'm going to say, like, I'm going to do the very best that I can with what I have, even though circumstances are not ideal. I'm going to be intentional about how I go through my day. And so that meditation practice helped me to really relax and focus on the things that were most important and put me in the right mindset to be able to then go into that day and realize that, there's so much that's out of my control, but this part of it was in my control. My mindset and how I decided to go into that day was completely within my control. So I took some intentional steps to make sure that, that those things were in place so that I had the best chance of really doing what I needed to do. And then there's a couple of other elements to this as well. And that part of it is having self-compassion, because I criticized myself. I was very, very self-critical in those moments, because I was like, oh my goodness, what am I doing here? I'm not good enough, and imposter syndrome, and like all these things started to come in. But then what I realized is that even though my intention was not to stay there, it wasn't like I was just saying, oh, I've got to make this work no matter what. But I did recognize that there was a reason in that particular day, in that particular moment, why I had to be there. And so, I recognized that I needed to be gentler on myself and have some self-compassion on myself in those moments, because if I focused so much on what I was doing wrong or what was going wrong or how I was messing up or whatever it is, that wasn't going to get me any happier. Then, so I really had to have that sense of like, no, I'm here to provide value. I have something of worth to give, and I'm going to look for those opportunities to help somebody or to do something that's going to, be beneficial to other people. And so I was very much, I tried to be very others focused in that situation. That's really what helped me so much, was taking the focus off myself and being self-critical and thinking about how other people are judging me and being others focused, because that others focused approach helped me to really just have a completely different perspective. So yeah, that was kind of what I went through. That was part of that meditation. And of course, for me, my faith is incredibly important to me. So it was very important to me that no matter what was going on, that I was aligned with what God wanted me to do. And I was, kind of praying through that and saying, Lord, I'm here for a reason. I'm here for a purpose. Use me today to do whatever it is that I need to do and help whoever it is that you need me to help.
You answered something that I was going to ask you about earlier, the self-care issue. So we've got that one handled, but I want to go back to meditation for a second.
Sure.
I think I heard 3 different main elements there. The first one was asking questions of yourself.
Yes.
And asking better questions. The second one I heard was being intentional about, saying this is what the day is going to be laid out. Intentionality. And the third one I heard was, it kind of slipped me for a second, but talk to me about those first two till that third one comes back in my mind. The question that you asked yourself and being intentional about the day, was that structured into the meditation?
That was part of it. So I actually had a couple of different parts of the meditation process. The first thing that I would do is a guided meditation. So to kind of get my mind at ease, I would play a guided meditation. And for me, the thing that really soothes me and calms me down is like listening to the ocean. And so that kind of sound, it just like helps me to, put me in a really good mind space. And then from that place, it's easier for me to focus and start to ask the right questions. Because if I'm coming directly into meditation in like the stressed, really highly stressed state, then it's a lot harder for me to go into, okay, now what do I, like the question aspect of it. But then I started to train myself and ask myself better questions. And the more I started to practice this, the better the outcome and the better the answers started to get. So I started to ask myself, okay, how can I make the most out of my day? How can I really add value? How can I do, what I need to do? And then it became a prayer of, Lord, open my eyes to what you want me to see and do today. And then moving in from that space. And it became so much clearer. Like I can even remember certain times where it just became so much clearer as I'm going through my day, because of that intention that I said, I started to look for opportunities and look for things that I maybe would have missed before. So that's where that intentionality came from. So first it was to calm my brain down enough to get to the place where I was open, and then to be able to ask those questions and be intentional about what I needed to do. But then also the other thing that is a big part of this, was a big part of my meditation, was hope. Like hope and realizing that this is not the end for me, like this is just a stepping stone to get to whatever that next place is, and focusing on what I'm excited about. Like what are the things that I really want to achieve and where do I want to go? Because that was kind of drawing me forward as well and not keeping me stuck where I was.
And it worked out perfectly, because one thing you mentioned that I think gets bypassed a lot, gratitude.
Yes.
So when you were originally talking about your meditation, you mentioned that you went through a little bit of a gratitude space.
That's
Can you talk a little bit more toward that?
Yes. And so gratitude is so powerful. And what I always tell my clients is you can't be grateful, like truly grateful, and frustrated or stressed or angry at the same time. And so if you want a quick way to shift that, if you're in the middle of something and you're in a storm and there's so many things going on, step into gratitude, even in those moments where things are really, you can't where it's so difficult for you to see the way forward. What can you be grateful for in those moments? Because that's going to put you in a completely different mind space. It's going to help you to calm down from that stress response, and it's also going to help you to really focus going forward. And so those are the things that, and also the more I started to practice gratitude, the more I started to see, the more I had things to be grateful for. So even in the people that were really challenging to work with at that point in time, I started to look for, how can I be grateful for them? What are some of the things? And it helped me step more into empathy. It helped me to see things from a different perspective. And so it just had so many, beautiful impacts, positive impacts in my life at that particular point in time, and gave me so much peace too.
Okay, so gratitude does play a huge part in that.
Yes.
Because once you kind of realize where you're going, so those are the parts that I heard that I think people miss. And you're there. I appreciate you sharing that with everybody. Hope everybody got a moment to write it down and say, okay, let me just make sure I do that. And I also want to just go back to something. You said you use ocean, the sounds of ocean to, would you say it's slowing down your thoughts that are coming in your mind, or would you say it's just getting you in a more peaceful manner? I mean,
yes.
The idea of starting it off with ocean sounds or, whatever music, or whatever it is, just pure quiet. In that meditation process, is that pretty important, do you think?
Oh, 100% for me, because I know in my mind, I don't know if it's the same for all our listeners, but in my mind, there's a lot of chatter that goes on, right? All the time. There's so many thoughts that swirl around there. And so for me, going into that place of just being still, trying to calm down that chatter in my head is so important, because if I just go into problem solving mode, it's not going to be nearly as effective as when I'm intentional about calming my mind and getting myself to the place where I can really just breathe and focus and be at peace and at ease. And then it becomes that much easier to be able to focus on, and I become more creative. Like there's things that, ideas and thoughts and intuitive hits that come to me, in that point of in time that I would have probably completely missed because of all the chatter that was going on if I wasn't intentional about calming my mind to the point where I can really just be present and mindful in the moment.
Wow. Love it. Love it. There's another point you brought up that I think is a little difficult to swallow. It will get better.
Oh, yes.
Okay. Talk to me a little bit about that. It's a syndrome, you say, that how this actually robs our joy and our fulfillment, waiting for things to get better before we decide to be whatever it's going to be.
Absolutely. Yeah, this is one of those things that I don't think a lot of us realize that we do it, right? We do it without even thinking about it. And I've done this for many, many years. It's always the next thing. It's always, and again, it goes back to what we were talking about earlier about focusing on the external, right? Like when this project gets done, or when we get to the end of the school year, then I'll have more time, or when, whatever the case is, it's like, it will get better when X, Y, Z happens. And then we focus so much on the external that we forget that we're actually living life in the meantime. And there's so many opportunities we have to really enjoy, and get that sense of joy out of every single moment, no matter what's going on. We have the choice. And that goes back to that it's 100% in our control. We can choose to find the joy, to find the gratitude and the happiness, and to be intentional and to do all of these different things in the current moment, regardless of what's going on. And so if you start to practice that now, even in the times when it's really tough, it just becomes, part of life, and life happens. So we don't know what's coming tomorrow or the next day or whatever the case is. We're not promised, tomorrow. So this idea of just waiting until the next thing happens, it becomes like this moving target, right? It's like you get to that point and it's like, oh, well, things are not exactly how I want it to be. So maybe when this happens, or maybe when that happens. And again, we start to focus so much on the external that we forget that we have so much control in every single moment of choosing joy, of choosing happiness, of focusing on the things that are going to give us a sense of peace. So that can totally rob us of our joy. And again, I speak from personal experience on this one, because I was notorious for doing this all the time. Always moving the goalpost. Yeah.
Always moving the goalpost and never celebrating it when it's accomplished at that point.
100%, yes.
Kind of with the subject, but off the subject. In your actual work now that you're doing, you talk about this thing of avoiding burnout. Okay, so if you're moving the goalpost, aren't you creating more burnout?
So when you say moving the goalpost, do you mean like?
Well, like if you're saying, okay, I'll be happy when this happens.
Oh, yes.
You get close to it, I'll be happy. I mean, you could, if we did it in our personal thing, we could say, I'll be happy when I get married. I'll be happy when I get divorced.
Sure.
I mean, we could like that, but in business world, I'll be happy when I'm making $1 million. I'll be happy when I'm making $2 million. I'll be happy when I retire. We're moving the goalposts all the time, and that creates burnout. Don't you have work in your this is outside of the TED Talk a little bit, but let's just talk about it for a second. Outside of the TED Talk, don't you have something that you work with that helps people understand that's burnout and take care of it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's a couple of different elements to what you were mentioning.
Yeah.
So there's nothing wrong, with having a goal. Like, we're designed to do that, right? To be better and to grow and to develop and things like that. But when we focus our happiness so much on, we'll be happy when those things occur, that's where we get tripped up. It's not so much about the goal itself or you're striving to the next thing, and that's fine. But we do have to watch ourselves and our thought process around that, because if we are tying our happiness to that and our contentment and our joy and fulfillment and peace and all of those things, that's where the danger comes in, because you're never going to get there. It's always going to be this elusive thing that we're striving for. Whereas what we need to understand is that we have so much control over that now. And there's also this concept of, and this has been researched pretty extensively, as far as the fact that happiness, like happy people, like are more inclined to be successful. So it's happiness that leads to success. It's not success that leads to happiness. And so
hold on. That's a writable moment. My whole thing is I always want people to be able to stop for a second and say, I don't want to type it, I want to write it.
Okay.
Happiness leads to success?
Yes. It's not the other way around. Yeah.
So, hold on. If you're happy, that leads to success. If you're happy on the job and you're a leader, that leads to success because your team will be happy as well. Is that kind of what we're saying?
Yeah, there's a ripple effect, across the board in so many areas of our lives. And if we pay attention to these areas that I talk about in the TED Talk, about how to get to that place where you have that true sense of happiness and fulfillment, it's almost like you become a different person. Like, everyone wants to be around the people that are happy, right? And that have the sense of, like, they just love life and they just love to just experience it to the fullest. And so those are the a lot of time, and it doesn't mean that you have to be this extroverted person. It's nothing to do with that. But when you have this intrinsic sense of happiness and fulfillment and joy, and you others focused, and you want to help out and help others and do what's right, and you're not focused so much on how people are perceiving you and all of that, it changes everything. It changes the dynamic. It changes the way you're viewed by other people. People want to be around you. People tend to work, like, be more productive and engaged and things like that when they work for a manager that really helps them to see the positives and helps them to have hope and drive towards things that are important to them, and champion them and doing these different things. So when you start to pull all of those things together and recognize that when you come from a sense of happiness and contentment and joy and fulfillment and all of these things, and your ability to help others and have a bigger impact is so much greater than if you don't.
And that creates happiness in the workplace.
Yes, it's like this ripple effect. Yeah.
I think you said it in your TED Talk, and if you hadn't, I want to make sure that maybe we're in agreement with this. We spend the majority of our life at the workplace.
Yes.
And work-life balance cannot really ever come until you are happy at work and happy at home.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, that's powerful. Let me ask you about this, though. Now, this one, getting close to my last couple of questions for you, but
sure.
This one, when you talked about it inside of the TEDx, I said, I got to have the details. I'm sure the listeners. You said you discovered a common thread to happiness. I think we've kind of covered those a little bit here already, but let's talk about that. What's that common thread to happiness?
Yes. And so in my TED Talk, I talk about how this boils down to value. So this word value, or this idea of value. And there's a couple of different ways to look at this. It's the value, first of all, and I know we talked a lot about, like, intrinsically, right, where this happiness comes from and how we're viewing ourselves. So it's the value we believe that we have to give. Like, if you are confident, if you are really grounded in who you are, and we talked about this in terms of the zone of genius, if you are really clear on who you are, what's core to you, what makes you unique, and how you can function from that space of confidence, of clarity, of, like, your own personal power, and then you're really clear on the value that you're here to provide, that in itself, brings a sense of happiness. But it's also about the value that others perceive in you, right? So it's like, how are you making that difference in the lives of other people? How do you see the value in the work that you contribute to, in the people's lives that you contribute to? So there's a couple of different elements to this, and it all comes together. It all comes together in terms of, like, what you see in yourself as your ability to provide value and make a difference, because we all want the sense of purpose, right? We want our lives to have meaning, and we want to have belonging. And so that belonging piece comes from what is the value that others see in me? How can I have an impact in the lives of other people? And what value can I then provide from this place of knowing who I am clearly and the value that I'm here to give? So that's how I described it in the TED Talk. It kind of boils down to to that piece of it. And all of these other elements come together too. It's like, the gratitude, being intentional, being able to focus internally to see how you can do this. And then also it's practicing self-care. It's surrounding yourself by people and by things that make you happy. One of my favorite quotes is by Jim Rohn, where he says, you're the average of the 5 people, right, that you spend the most amount of time with. So if you want to be happy, you want to make sure that you're surrounding yourself with people and putting yourself in situations that are going to, really fulfill you and that have meaning for you, where you feel like you belong, where you feel like you can contribute.
That's powerful. I really like that, because what I gather now, and talk about it in the TED Talk, but what I'm gathering right now as we unpack it, it's the value that you bring. Mm-hmm. And the more value you bring, the more happy you're going to be, the happier you're going to be. Mm-hmm. I did also find interesting, if I didn't get them confused, this idea of those people who won the lottery versus those who are who are quadriplegic or in a wheelchair. Their happiness after a year into it, you said there's no difference.
Yeah.
Tell us more about that.
That's really fascinating. And it does go back to the lens through which we view the world, like what we were talking about earlier, where people, I know this is a little bit of a different example, but if you put 2 people through the same circumstances, they can have a completely different outcome. So whether you are a quadriplegic who just went through like a really traumatic, injury or accident or whatever the case is, or you win $1 million, at some point, depending on your view of the world and how you approach this, you can come back to exactly that same level of happiness. It's kind of like that happiness set point if you're not intentional about this area, if you're not intentional about what meaning am I giving the situation that I'm in right now. How can I step more into gratitude? How can I really be more at the in control of how I'm feeling and things like that, and not let my circumstances dictate how what I'm feeling and my level of happiness.
Oh wow. Okay. Wow. This, ladies and gentlemen, I'll put it back up here, be in the notes. You really need to go listen to the TED Talk, and then you need to make some contact. But we'll talk about that in a second. I would like to know, how did this TEDx affect your life and or your business? How did it affect you, your life or your business?
Yeah. Well, I will tell you from going through this in my own personal journey, it profoundly changed a lot of things. Because what I started to realize as I went through the process is this whole message is so core to what I believe in. It's so core to my own, what I call my zone of genius, right?
Yes.
It's very closely tied with what I believe I'm here to do, which is to really help people to step fully into the people that God has called them to be, so that they can then go and add value into the world and have the impact. Because we're all here for a purpose, for a reason. And the more we can tap into that and really have that joy in this journey, the better equipped we are to be able to do the things that we are here to do and to get that sense of fulfillment and purpose and all those things. So when I started to realize and recognize this, and then I realized that there's ways that that I can get this message out into the world, and then I started to see the impact that it was having, it changed everything for me. It made me so much more confident and grounded, and it was like that validation of, oh, okay, like this is it, like this, I'm on the right path, because this is resonating with people, and it feels really good to me based on my own struggles and journey that I went through. And now it's such an area of passion and interest for me. It's like it just became this this really interesting path for me to explore. So that's how it really changed everything. And now my business is really a big part of my business is based on exactly what we're talking about today. It's like, how do you take that into the workplace to be effective for yourself, for your team, and then also for the organization at large. And so that's really the work that I do.
I got to tell you, you walked right into the next question. I think I can hold your feet to the fire here. How are you helping people now? What are you doing right now to help people?
Sure.
With your company? What are you doing?
Right. So from a coaching perspective, a lot of the work that I do is to help people to find what is it that makes them unique, tap back into the things that bring, help them come alive. Like, what is that zone of genius for you? What are the things that maybe have been dormant for a while, you didn't even realize were strengths, were passions, were interests, and all of those things. And then how can you align that with either the work that you're currently doing, so to bring more of that sense of happiness and engagement and fulfillment, so you can have a bigger impact. Or if this is not the right place for you, to have that level of clarity to say, maybe I need to make a different decision and move in a different direction, so that I feel more connected to what I'm doing, and I have that sense of of purpose and meaning in the work that I'm doing. Because obviously that has an effect on the people, because I work primarily with leaders. So I'm a leadership and executive coach. And so that has a profound effect on the people around you, right? So as leaders, we're absolutely going to have an impact on the people that we are here to serve in so many different capacities. It's not just the people that directly report to us, but also, there's so many other opportunities we have for impact. And so for me, it's really important for me to be able to help my clients to see how they can function at their highest level without burning out, without the stress, but with really having more of the sense of joy and happiness in their careers, because that's then going to spill out into everyone they're interacting with. And of course, it has a big effect in their personal lives as well. It changes everything. I've seen this from my own experience. It completely changed my life when I was able to tap into this. And so I have that passion now to be able to help, other people to do the same.
I like that.
Yeah.
So, and this is all in your master class that you teach on your website, or is it separate, the coaching and then the master class is the two separate entities, or is it the same thing?
That's a great question. So the masterclass is actually just a completely free training that I do, and that is it's to uncover or to show like the 5 pitfalls, right? Basically, it's the 5 mistakes that it's easy for leaders to make that really prevent them from having that level of impact that they have, and from avoiding burnout and all of those different things. So it's things that I've learned the hard way through my own career, but it's these things that I now get to share with others to say, hey, just to check in, kind of these checkpoints to say, how am I doing in each of these areas, and am I falling prey to this? Because if so, that's probably getting you down a path that you don't want to go down. And so that masterclass is really about that. And then in addition to that, on the coaching side of things, I offer my clients group coaching and one-on-one coaching to help them to personally and individualize the coaching to what it is that they're struggling with in their own leadership journey and in their own lives. So that's kind of how it all comes together.
Okay, great. I love that. Tell people how they can get a hold of you. The website address is up on the screen. Those of you who are listening to the earpods or exercising or whatever, just how do people get a hold of you?
Sure.
Take this class.
So my website is just my first and last name. So it's SharissaSebastian.com. So it's SHARISSA and then SEBASTIAN. So you can go to my website, and there's a link right on that homepage that will take you directly to the masterclass. But if you want to go directly there, and the link is up on the screen right now, but it's SharissaSebastian.com/masterclass, and that will get you right to the page where you can register for that masterclass. And it's completely free class.
So, if there's no doubt when you get an opportunity to grasp hold of a major component of your life, your happiness, you should really take advantage of that. And that's really good. And again, just to emphasize why I thought this would be such a great TED Talk to have, because if I'm happy as a leader, it's going to create happiness with my team.
Yes.
And I think that's so critical. So my last question for you, and I didn't give you a chance to prepare for this one, I don't think. I used to tell everybody I'm going to ask you this, and I said I'm not going to anymore.
Okay.
I don't know if we talked about this or not. What question should I have asked you that I did not ask you? Is there a question I should have asked you that I did not ask you?
That's a good one. Totally putting me on the spot here, Glenn. Let's see.
Exactly.
I might need a moment for that one. A question that you could have asked that you haven't. Let's see. Maybe it's about, and I know we've touched on this a little bit already, but maybe it's about like, where do you start with this? Because I get this from a lot of my clients, who start to work with me. It's like, it seems like it can be a little bit overwhelming and daunting. It's like, okay, where do I even start with this? So
good question. Where do you start?
Yeah, where do I start with when it comes to happiness? And actually, a lot of this is outlined in the talk. But I will tell you that once you start to have a little bit of a mindset shift or a different perspective on it, that's when things start to change. So first of all, it's creating awareness, right? You have to be aware of how you're showing up, what's going on. For me, like I feel that stress. So when I have like the stress response or something's not right or whatever it is, I start to feel stressed out in my body. I start to, breathe shallow and all those things. So creating awareness around like when you go through your everyday at work, what is it that causes you that level of stress? What is it that makes you unhappy and frustrated and all of these other things? So first of all, creating awareness around that. So you start to notice these things. And then it's also going to what we talked about today. So these different elements that are outlined in the TED Talk around how do you then from that place of awareness step further into, into happiness. And you do that by being grateful in the moment, right? Taking those opportunities, seeing every situation that you're in, whether good or bad or whatever it is, as an opportunity for you to grow, for you to develop and to do things. And then to be intentional about how you're approaching and how you're showing up in every situation, because that is going to impact how other people see you and the value that you're going back to value that we were talking about earlier. And then just being others focused makes it so much, rather than focusing on yourself and how others view you, it's focusing on how can I add value, how can I help other people. And then a couple of other things we talked about is like just giving back, surrounding yourself with people that make you happy, situations and, environments and things like that make you happy. And then just being easy on yourself and just, practicing that self-care and self-compassion. Yeah.
You started it. You opened up another can of worms. When you said that, and I believe this might, no matter how bad you feel, if you give first, without thinking about what I get back from it, talk to me about that. I mean, because I think you mentioned a company that gives you 2 hours a week. I forgot what company that was, because what stuck with me is, I could go give first. I don't have to wait for the company to pay for me.
That's
2
right.
hours.
That's right. Yeah. And that was Bank of America. I don't know if they still have that policy in place, but yes, they give their employees 2 hours. And I think more and more companies are starting to recognize just, see the importance of that, and how important it is not just to give back, but even for the employees to feel that sense of like purpose and wow, my company gives me an opportunity to really give back and make a difference to to other people. And so that is really, really important to happiness, because the more we, and then one of the other quotes that I love, and I don't know who said this, but it's like and I think it may have been Tony Robbins that I heard this from, but he talks about how the secret to life is in giving, right? Like there's so much joy and purpose and fulfillment you get when you give of yourself with no, and this is the key to this, is with no expectation of getting anything in return. It's not that you give to receive something, but it's you give because you know that you want to make a difference. You want to make sure that you matter. We all want this, right? This is part of how we're wired, is we all want to matter. We all want to know that we have something to give. And so, yes, so it could be volunteering. It could be outside of work, volunteering. It could be looking for opportunities inside of work. And that's a lot of what I talk about, even in my coaching, is looking for opportunities to go above and beyond, to look at people as people, not just employees, not just somebody that's there to do a job, but how can I really get to know this person a little bit more, so I can help them, I can support them in different ways. So it's all of those kinds of things. It's not just simply, I'm going to, volunteer here and do something for others. But it's also about how do I have that, how do I create this culture, of giving back in every situation. It doesn't have to be just in volunteering.
That's so perfect. Sharissa, I cannot say thank you enough for taking the time. I know we went a little bit longer with the technical glitch we had earlier, which no one gets to hear. But okay, so we'll be fine with that. It was a little bit more than technical glitch, but we won't hear that for however long that was. But I want to thank you very much. I know your time is valuable. I know you're bringing good lessons out to everybody and doing a lot of great teaching. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Oh, you're so welcome. This was so much fun, Glenn. Thank you for the opportunity. I so appreciate it. And of course, if anyone has any questions, they can feel free to reach out to me through my website as well.
Okay, yeah. I'll make sure that's in the notes for everybody, so you can reach out to her and get that masterclass. The question is, who's going to do it first, the listener or me? Who's going to do it first? We'll find out.
Yes.
We'll find out.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. You're so welcome.
Thank you for connecting with us here at Touchstone Publishers. Please join our group, Essential Leadership Skills, and share your leadership knowledge with us all.